The most powerful paper trail in modern political history isn't sitting in a courtroom. It isn't locked inside a government vault. It is allegedly sitting in a private briefing room in Washington, being reviewed by people whose names you will never see in any headline. And every single page of it has one name written across the top: Mark Carney, the man who just won the most consequential election in Canadian history, the man the international press crowned as the last rational voice in a world gone mad. The man who stood at podiums from Davos to Ottawa and told the world he was different, cleaner, smarter, and untouchable. Those documents say otherwise. And if even half of what is buried inside them is true, the political earthquake that follows will not just flatten one career, it will reshape the entire architecture of Western power. It started, as most Washington scandals do, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A quiet conversation between two senior staffers in the House Judiciary Committee, a reference to a folder that wasn't supposed to exist, a name that had no business appearing inside a classified federal investigation based in Florida. But there it was, Project Maple, Carney, 2021 to 2025. 4 years, 47 subfiles, and according to 3 separate sources with direct knowledge of the document review process, a financial trail that connects Mark Carney's private consulting years to entities, transactions, and back-channel communications that his public biography has never once mentioned. To understand why this is so dangerous, you have to understand what Mark Carney was doing between 2020 and 2024. On the surface, the answer is clean and impressive. He was the United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. He was running the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, a coalition of financial institutions managing over $130 trillion in assets. He was the most connected financial mind on the planet, moving between boardrooms in London, Geneva, New York, and Riyadh, with the kind of access that sitting heads of state would trade entire diplomatic relationships to obtain. That was the public version. That was the version that got him elected. But Washington's leaked documents are telling a different story entirely. According to individuals who have reviewed portions of the Project Maple files, Carney's role as a global climate envoy was not purely philanthropic. Embedded within his network of green finance commitments were a series of infrastructure investment negotiations, totaling an estimated $6.2 billion across 3 separate sovereign wealth fund arrangements that were never disclosed to the Canadian public, never flagged to international ethics bodies, and according to one particularly explosive subfile, directly intersected with financial structures linked to Trump Organization adjacent investment vehicles operating through shell entities registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. Read that again. The man running against Trump's economic worldview was allegedly doing quiet financial business inside the same investment ecosystem that Trump's own network was operating in. The timeline here is not accidental, and it is not subtle. In March 2022, Carney gave a landmark speech at the London School of Economics, where he declared that the era of fossil fuel finance was over, and that any nation clinging to carbon-dependent economic models was writing its own obituary. The speech was celebrated across Europe. Climate activists quoted it for months. But according to the Project Maple subfiles, in the same quarter that speech was delivered, a financial advisory firm with documented ties to Carney's post-Bank of England consulting network received a $340 million routing instruction connected to a Qatari infrastructure fund that had co-investment arrangements with 2 Trump-linked real estate development entities. The optics alone are catastrophic. The legal exposure is potentially far worse. Now, here is where it gets darker. The documents don't just allege financial entanglement, they allege knowledge suppression. One of the most explosive claims buried inside the Project Maple files is that in late 2023, as Carney was beginning to position himself for a run at the Liberal Party leadership, his legal team was made aware of a specific set of communications, encrypted signal logs from 2022 that had been captured as part of the broader Mar-a-Lago document seizure investigation. These logs allegedly show that a senior member of Carney's inner advisory circle had direct contact with a Trump administration operative, not to negotiate trade, not to discuss climate policy, but to discuss the terms under which certain financial documentation would remain outside the scope of any future Canadian federal disclosure process. In plain language, someone close to Carney was allegedly negotiating to keep evidence quiet. And according to the Judiciary Committee sources, that negotiation was partially successful until now. The implications of this are staggering because they don't just touch Carney personally. They implicate the entire apparatus that brought him to power. The Liberal Party of Canada ran its entire 2025 election campaign on the platform of transparency, sovereignty, and resistance to foreign economic pressure.